Hey everyone, this is Tiqqle, and in today's video we're going over the Covenant abilities for Elemental Shaman. I thought about doing all of the specs together, but I decided I'm going to do one spec at a time. I'll give you little bits and pieces of information, but down in the description I will link all the other videos. If you're an Enhanced Shaman, you'll be down. I'll put it down there. Resto Shaman, put it down there. We're going to go over one spec in each video, and then at the end I will make a video about overall which one am I going to go, because I've assessed each one of the Covenant abilities, how much damage they're doing, how many globals, the cooldowns, and we're going to get into it right now. Now, let's start with Kyrian. And if you're watching this video, I probably haven't subbed yet, but definitely think about it. 85% of you haven't. If you do, you'll help me hit my goal of 20K, so I really appreciate it. Also going for Twitch partner over at twitch.tv/tiqqlethis. Get over there and let's have some good times. We're testing out PTR and beta stuff on the daily, but let's go ahead and jump into Kyrian Covenant ability. Now, if you don't know, you get two abilities as every Covenant, right? You get basically the Covenant ability, which is a Covenant-wide, no matter what class you are, and then you get the class-specific Covenant ability, which varies depending on the spec sometimes. So let's go ahead. Overall, the first thing you're going to be getting for joining Kyrian is this guy, Summon Steward. He's really a Swolkin. When you summon him, he gives you a little potion. This potion looks like this. It says, restores 15% of health and removes all diseases, poisons, cures, curses, and bleeds affecting you. Seems very good for PvP. Guess what? You can't use it in arena. You'll probably be able to use it in a battleground, but it does seem kind of strong. There are some buffs in the Soulbind trees that actually increase it as well and make it even more powerful. But because you can't use it in PvP like in arenas, it's a little bit sad, and I wish Blizzard would change this, because it's a little unfortunate that you can use things like Fleshcraft and other things we'll get into in PvP, but for Kyrian, you just kind of get... it's lame. You can't use it in arena, then what's the point of having it? In terms of, so that's what it is in PvP. In PvE, it could be useful, but you could just use a healing potion. I don't know when this will really be overly useful, unless it wipes things like, you know, damage stacks from Mythic Plus or Necro stacks. I'm trying to make up something that could be useful for it, but it's just regenerating health. It's not increasing damage. It's not even increasing your defenses. It's just doing health. So that's just something, I'm not really that impressed with it overall. It's cool that he's here and you can actually, you know, get certain, I think he can even like help you fight or whatever. Tell my friends how great they are, you know, and I can like do that. Go tell him how great he is. It's cool. I actually really like the Kyrian zones. I think they're really beautiful. Bastion is a beautiful zone. One of my probably my favorite zone in Shadowlands. But to be honest with you, this is an underwhelming ability. So let's move on. The big one, which is the class-specific one for Shaman, is Vesper Totem. Let's read through it. Summon a totem at the target location for 30 seconds. 30 seconds is a long time. Your next 3 damaging abilities or 3 damaging spells or abilities will cause the totem to radiate 1,000 arcane damage up to 6 enemies near the totem. And your next 3 healing spells will heal up to 6 allies. By the way, we have this spreadsheet. We're going to go, I mean, we've done so much testing, so we'll get into that, the details of all of them, just so you know that's coming. But yeah, so this hits 6 allies or 6 enemies. 6 is a pretty good number. They've done a lot of Mythic Plus kind of tuning of how many targets can be hit. But yeah, so it's on a 1-minute cooldown, and it is on the GCD. So let's go ahead and just see how it works first, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put it down. I put it down. I can actually move it, but it will induce a 4-second cooldown. Again, I can move it. It's down for 30 seconds. You can see the cooldown right here. And now if I use a damaging ability, I'll use over here, it pops. And it pops for about 1,000 damage across each of the targets that it hits. I do it again, it pops again. Do it again, it pops again. If I use a heal, it pops a heal. So that's, you know, neat, right? Yeah, and it's actually not bad. In PvE, it's actually doing pretty decent damage. 6 targets hitting for 1k. That's 6k a pop times 3. That's 18k damage every 1 minute. And it only costs 1 global to put down. If you move it, sure, that costs a cooldown, but it only costs 1 global to really press it, but then you have to use additional globals to pop it. So that actually makes it pretty darn good in PvE. The problem comes when we think about it in PvP. In PvP, this actually is... what I didn't show you is how much health the totem has. The totem has 5 HP. That's a problem. In PvP, a lot of totems just get smacked down. Like I can put all these down and they can get instantly just boop, meleeed by anyone, including the healer, the pet, anything, right? So it's actually not that good from a PvP standpoint. If you can get your globals off, because it will take 3 globals to get all the damage out in PvP, right? In that duration, if it stays up, it's actually pretty decent damage. The problem is the 5 HP. it makes it almost unusable for high-rated arena. Now, the one way that I've seen this being useful in PvP is when you place it over here, I'd bring it in and then pop it. So I could bring it out and then I can move it, which is off GCD, so I'd have to move it in and then use an ability at the same time. So that way it would actually guarantee you at least one pop, but then if people see it, they could quickly kill it. Sure, it's within 3 globals. That's 4.5 seconds, but that's still a pretty big risk. And micromanaging that is going to be pretty challenging in PvP. So overall, my review of Kyrian for Elemental is, in PvP, it's honestly, if the HP stays at 5 health, I think Blizzard really should increase it to be similar to Healing Stream Totem, where Healing Stream Totem actually has 10% of the player's health, so it's respectable. Or give me 5% of the player's health. But if it doesn't actually get a buff of HP, I don't think it's going to be that viable in Arena. In casual PvP, it could be fun. BGs, okay, sure. People usually ignore those types of things in casual PvP. Could be kind of fun, because I'll go to the spreadsheet here. So Kyrian, and I'll ignore all this stuff for now, so you don't get distracted. So max target says 18k damage. Costs 4 GCDs to do it on a 1-minute cooldown. You can, we're trying to come up with some calculations on the stream. If you're on 2 targets, it'll do 6k damage. If you do 1 target, it does 3k damage. Okay, and we'll compare all the damages of everything later, okay? This is just kind of breaking down each one at a time. So yeah, each price is 1,000, and it could pulse to up to 18k, taking that many globals. These are some fun facts about it. It's 900 heals, so it comes up to about a 3k heal, which 3k is about a little bit over, it's about 12-13% of someone's health. It's on 1-minute cooldown, that's good to know. It does not proc on Echo ability, but it does proc on the Echo cast itself. What do I mean by that? It means that if I place it and I use Echo, it procs because Echo does damage itself. But if I use something like if I use this, it'll only pop once. See, it popped once. The Echo ability didn't pop it. So that's just a fun fact to note. Shout out to the Twitch chat that suggested that. It also does not proc on overloads. That's important. You just saw that too. It does not proc on overloads. Healing Stream Totem does proc it. So those are just some fun facts about it. But in general, I would say PvE, it's good. PvP, it's not that viable unless they change the HP of that totem. So that's what I think in general of this. Unfortunate that Owlkin, again, is not that useful. The heal is okay, but it's really just not that great. It's good for PvE-ish, but you can just use a healing potion. Like, who cares? This actually makes it seem like it would be so good in PvP, but for some reason you can't use it in Arena or scrims that I've been able to test with. So the other thing is, the last thing I wanted to touch on is the conduit that increases the damage of Vesper Totem. It says the Vesper Totem is 100% more effective against the targets nearest to it. So that means it should do 2k damage, right? Well, I don't really know if this is working right now because my tests have been pretty sad. So if I use it on this, Vesper Totem did still 1,000. So I would imagine it does 2,000, but even then, I don't think that's necessarily that amazing of a buff. It is useful. It increases the damage. We do like that. But there's some other things you'll see later that I think might be a little bit more useful. So that's what I think about Kyrian. Let's jump to the next one. All right, next up is Necrolord. Necrolord has 2 abilities. Number 1 is the racial one, which is Fleshcraft, which is very strong in PvP. Form a shield of flesh and bone over 4 seconds that absorbs 20% of the maximum health for 2 minutes. Channeling near a corpse claims additional power, getting up to 50%. Honestly, this is a incredibly strong defensive ability that every Necrolord gets. And I'm not going to lie to you, I personally think that it should be adjusted or changed. It is too powerful. It really is quite OP in PvP, especially in Arena. You can precast it in the Arena, and it actually sits for 2 minutes. A lot of Arena games won't last 2 minutes. So I think, personally, I think this is kind of OP, but it's a little bit boring. It doesn't really, it's just like a huge bubble that's on you. And I am a little disappointed because I think it's a kind of a boring thing to do, especially for some classes that are already so tanky or have a lot of immunities already, right? So yeah, you might say like, oh, this will help Shaman. No, it helps everybody. You know what I mean? And that's just, I personally do not like it from a balance standpoint. I think it's broken. Now, that's that. And unlike Kyrian, this is useful racial, right? Or like a Covenant-wide ability. But next up is the other ability, which is specific to Shaman and specific to the spec. So again, we'll have the other specs tested out in the other videos, and then I'll make a culmination video. But this one is blast your target with Primordial Wave, dealing 1k shadow damage. And apply Flame Shock to an enemy, or heal an enemy for 1k. 1k is not that much. 1k is about 1/20th of your health, which is 5k, or that's 5% of the HP. It's not that good. Lava Burst does about double that when it crits, which it always does. Your next Lava Burst will also hit all the targets affected by your Flame Shock. Sounds cool, right? Well, we'll get into it, right? We'll test it out. I'll use Flame Alley first. I'll Lava Burst because it'll last longer. I can get up to 6 targets tagged, okay? Which is pretty good, right? So 2. But I don't know if I had a problem last time I tested this with I got out of range. 3. And that's with Flame Alley. Flame Alley making Flame Shock last a lot longer on people. There's that. We'll go ahead and use it. All right, we'll just do 5. So I'll use a Primordial Wave, and then I'm going to Lava Burst. I hit a lot of lava burst there, but so that was good. The amount of spread damage is decent because if you look, when I Lava Burst, I Primordial Waved, and then I Lava Burst once, and that sent off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 overloads to the 5 targets that I casted. So that's 5 targets getting Lava Burst at least 5 times. Well, 5, in summary, and then had some overloads, which is pretty decent. It's okay. That's okay. But if you think about what I just did, it took me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 globals to get that set up, and then I only did about 2k damage to all the targets, which isn't that much. It's not like a big AoE pop, right? So that's just the thing to think about here. It does work with Ascendance. It will increase the damage a little bit, but it doesn't. But it's only 1 Lava Burst. It's not like all the Lava Bursts you do for the next 10 seconds. So that's why I think this one is actually particularly weak, especially for well, Ellie actually is an okay version of it, but it's particularly weak. So at a max targets, if I was to get, let's say, 5 or 6, I think we did 5 targets. Yep, hitting 2k each target. Then I'm hitting 5 targets plus the primordial damage is about 11k, and it takes me 6 GCDs to do that. And that means that takes me 9 seconds of setup, okay, to do spread pressure. And then, but it is on a 45-second cooldown, which is pretty decent. The other thing to point out is that when I did that, I actually got a lot of stacks of Fulmination. Each Lava Burst gave me a Fulmination stack. So that means each Overload also gave me a Fulmination stack. So that part's pretty decent. But the thing is Fulmination really going to be doing that much damage? So far, it doesn't look like it. I did a damage breakdown. Videos down below. But yeah, so then if I do it with 2 targets, it actually gets a lot weaker, so if I only do it with 2 targets, now I'm only getting an extra Lava Burst on 2 targets. So I used Lava Burst, so it seems okay, but it doesn't seem that amazing. It's on a 45-second cooldown. If this was on a 30-second cooldown, I would say it could be better, because if you're thinking about it in Arena, for example, I'm going to only get that 1 additional Lava Burst. I don't know. I think that the few changes they could make is make the cooldown shorter, or make it so it gives me a buff that all the Lava Bursts I do for 10 seconds, 12 seconds are repeated. That would make it worth. Right now, with it just being 1 Lava Burst, it's actually, in my mind, it's not really viable for PvP. And to be honest, in PvE, you're not, to AoE, to want to hit 5 targets, you don't Flame Shock, wait the cooldown of 6 seconds Flame Shock, wait 6 seconds Flame Shock. This is just not really a viable option. And I said 6 GCDs. It's actually 6 Flame Shocks, which is like 30 seconds to set up. So it's not really very viable. It could be kind of neat, though, if they made it so that there was a buff. But Mythic Plus, I don't see this as being viable. I see it being potentially viable on 2 targets. But that's what I think about it. I'm not a really big fan. The only thing I will say is that Fleshcraft is extremely good in PvP, but Primordial Bolt just does not seem like it's that great, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Necrolord. I will go over Enhance is very interesting. Resto is pretty interesting as well, but we'll go over those in the other videos again. But that's what I think. So single target is not really viable. It doesn't really make sense, right? Because your Primordial Bolt's just going to repeat on itself. So what's the point? It also won't work with Echo. So that's good to know. So if I echoed and then I primordialed, it wouldn't quite work. We have a lot of things that chat point out. It is affected by the Lava Burst legendary, which is good, but you're just getting an additional Lava Burst cast out. So I don't know. The damage does go up with Ascendance, and Echo does not work with the Primordial. It repeats the Flame Shock. So if you Echo and you Primordial, you get 2 Flame Shocks on the same target. It's kind of poop. We'll go over this one, which is kind of interesting because it does scale with the Maelstrom weapon increase. So again, Enhance, it is actually a little bit better because of Stormkeeper and some damage increases you can do there, but we'll get into that in another video. So that's what I think about Necrolord. Not really that impressed. I thought it was going to be insane. Not really that impressed. It's kind of neat. Could be good for casual PvP. Single target, not that great. Mythic Plus is not going to be viable. Mythic Plus is going to be too fast-paced and getting the ball going very quickly. So that's what I kind of think. But Fleshcraft is good. but I hope it gets nerfed. So that's what we think about Necrolord. We're going to jump into the next one. And one more thing, the conduit that is actually buffing this actually says that it has a chance to not incur a cooldown. So 20% chance baseline. It will go up as you level up your conduit. So is that good? Well, okay, like let's pretend that I'll use it. Okay, it did get a cooldown. Okay, so now I'm kind of, out of luck, right? And it's a 45-second cooldown, so that's okay. But, there it is. If it didn't get a cooldown, I could Lava Burst, and then I could reuse it, and then I can Lava Burst again. So I get 2 Lava Bursts in the target. But I don't think it's going to, chaining more than that is, statistically going to get sad, right? So I still hold my my opinion on it, but that's what the conduit itself does. 20% chance to not incur a cooldown. All right, now we're on to Nigth Fae. Now there's something I got to point out about Nigth Fae. Nigth Fae, I'm going to start with this. The conduit ability says Fae Transfusion deals 15% increased damage and channels 15% faster. So I will use it without the channeling, and then I will switch over to using it with this buff because I want to show you what it looks like normally, and then we can go from there. So let's go ahead and I'll review the 2 abilities right now. Number 1, let's go over the Covenant one itself. Soul Shape. Turn into a Vulpin, teleporting 15 yards in front and increasing your movement speed by 50%. You may activate Soul Shape every few seconds to teleport again. The thing I like about this, listen, I like this one because it's mobility. In Ellie Shaman, already very mobile class. Now we have this. As an Ellie, I do like this very much. And I like that it instantly teleports you right away. So when you go into the Fox, you can then use it again. It'll blink you again. So you'll be able to move pretty quick, and it's going to be elusive. The only thing that's sad is you can't Ghost Wolf while being in the form. But it actually synergizes pretty well with the Finesse ability. But yeah, it's a 1.5 minute cooldown. It's not bad, chat. It's not bad. Let me know what you think down below, but it's really not bad. Now, that's that. Now, the other one is this. Transfer the life force of up to 4 enemies in the targeted area, dealing 4.2k damage to each of them over 2.8 seconds. That's a lot of damage. Pressing Fae Transfusion again within 20 seconds will release 15% of the damage from Fae Transfusion, healing up to 8 allies near you. So this one is actually pretty strong. So I'll show you what it looks like and how it works. And we have some things that I'll point out about it. All right, here we go. We're going to go ahead and use it. It's a targeted AoE, and I cannot, I guess I can target a moving target, but I cannot channel while running. I can't even channel while using Spirit Walker's Grace, so just be aware. So let's go ahead and use it. Remember, it only hits 4 targets. There it goes. And you'll see that it's doing about 700 damage a tick. Pretty decent. It's hitting 7 times, I believe. I have it written up. 4 targets, 7 times. Okay, and it ticks, during a channel, the channel lasts about 2.8 seconds, right? So if we go over here to this is the breakdown. And this is enhanced. We'll go over that in the other video, but it's very strong for enhanced because it scales off of mastery. And it's pretty nice for enhance, actually. But anyway, Ellie, it does about 20k damage to the max number of targets, 4. It does cost you about 2 GCDs worth of time because you are channeling it, but it's on a 2-minute cooldown. Okay, so it actually is on the longest cooldown of anything, and I haven't seen anything to reduce the cooldown. Now, for 2 targets, it's going to do about a 10k. For about 1 target, it's doing about 5k. We'll do the comparison of all the numbers later, but yeah. For Elemental itself, you can't run cast it. It's on a big cooldown. It does heal if I were to reuse it again, which I let the duration kind of go, but I would pop for about a 3.5k heal. It's hitting for about, 5k per target. So that is not bad. And it only costs 1 GCD. But here's the thing. So if you look at the numbers, it's actually doing more damage than Vesper Totem. And actually might cost you less global. 2 less globals potentially. But the problem is 2-minute cooldown. Numerically, Vesper Totem is going to do more because it does about 18k to 6 targets with a 1-minute cooldown. So technically, Vesper is going to do more damage. And we already talked about Necrolord, how that's kind of a little convoluted, right? So that's just good to know. The other thing is that it only hits 4 targets versus 6, so a little sad. So in Mythic Plus perspective, this is actually doing a decent amount of damage, but it's a longer cooldown. That may be not as big of a deal because might be between pulls and such in Mythic Pluses, but if you're always pulling, you're always getting stuff, technically Vesper Totem will do overall more damage to more and to more targets, really. Well, I guess it'll do more damage if you max the targets out. If you are maxing targets out at 4, this will do more. So it's kind of an interesting comparison. And so that's Mythic Plus. For rating, I think again Vesper Totem will come ahead in terms of damage. But if you're on a 1 target if you're doing 1 target, it's doing 5k. Vesper's doing whereas at one target is 3k. So it actually is doing a little bit more single target, but again, for a 2-minute cooldown versus a 1 minute. The other thing, yeah, so I'm already starting to do some comparisons here. So it's actually pretty decent for Mythic Plus, for Ellie. It's decent for, single target-ish. For PvP, the problem lies in that channel. You're going to be channeling it, but similar to a lot of other things, you could be casting, you could get interrupted. It is the nature school, though. So if I were to get kicked on this, I would actually lose the ability to heal and do a lot of other things. So that is something to also be aware of. So that's that. Now, let's see, is there anything else caught? No, I don't think so. I think that's about it. So that's what it does for Ellie. I'm going to go put in the conduit, and you're going to see how much faster it can go with that. But that's just a good thing for you to be aware of, right? Is that with the conduit, it actually will make it go faster. So maybe it won't be 2.8 seconds. It'll be like 2.4 seconds. And then the increased damage by 15% as well. That damage might make it push over this amount that is, comparing it to the Vesper Totem. But in general, that's the damage. It's relatively high, but again, in PvP, you can get kicked, but at least they can't touch the totem, right? If they don't have any kicks, then they can't stop the damage, or if you stun them, it would be, or they have no kicks, you can actually get the full channel off, compared to if you put down a Vesper Totem, it could just be hit, and it has to be locationally on them too. But then again, this is also locational, but yeah. All right, so I went ahead and I put on the conduit that increases the damage of Fel Transfusion and increases the channeling speed. Now it is channeling at 2.4 seconds. So now if I press it, it's going to do a total of about almost 800 damage. So that's giving me about another 1,000 damage. Overall, Vesper still is leading it, but at least it is a little bit faster. So in PvP, it really doesn't seem that viable because you'll probably get kicked unless they don't have any kicks. But because you're Ellie, you're at range, you might be able to use it from a distance on a particular team. But it is also going to be hard for you to make sure they're in the AoE circle. It won't be a smart cast like the Venthyr ability, which we'll get into next, which is a little bit more intelligent. On to Venthyr. Venthyr has two abilities. Number one, Door of Shadows. This is a 1-minute cooldown. It looks like this. You basically select where you're going to go, and you Door of Shadows, you teleport there. It is a channel, but it is the Shadow School. So if I get kicked on it, it's the Shadow School. It won't lock me out of any of my spells. So it's actually almost better to use this early, get a kick on it, and then throw down a kick. Or you can use it for mobility, etc., in certain PvP maps, etc. Now, in PvE, I don't think it'll be particularly that useful. Maybe it will to be able to cross a room and not go through poop or something like that. But in general, it won't be quite as good because it's not like you're going to be able to quickly get out of a puddle because it has a 1.5 second cast. Now, the other ability, which is the damaging ability for Venthyr, is Chain Harvest. This recently got changed, which I reviewed in a different video, and I'll put it down in the description. Send a wave of ammo at the target, which jumps to additional nearby targets, dealing 3.4k shadow damage up to 5 enemies, restoring 2.5k health up to 5 allies. So it's AoE healing, and then it's AoE damaging as well. For each target critically struck, the cooldown of Chain Harvest is reduced by 5 seconds. It is at a 1.5-minute cooldown, relatively high cooldown compared to some of the other Covenants. Now, this ability itself is a cast. Now, because I'm Ellie, I have to cast it, right? I'm not enhanced. It actually does go instant cast for enhanced, which is good. But here, I have to cast it. So if I cast, you'll see it actually is it's healing a bunch of people, which is kind of funny, but it's doing about 3.6k damage a hit, which is pretty darn good. That's a pretty good amount of damage, and it is another school. So if I go back to our list here, now for Venthyr, again, it hits for 3.6k each, max targets of 5, which means it's doing about 18k, exactly the same amount of damage as Vesper Totem. But it is just one cast, which is kind of nice because it will definitely just get the damage out and done. It won't be over the duration of globals. So this is the highest single casting ability damage that you can do across all the Covenants. You might be saying, well, Tiqqle, Nigth Fae. Yeah, but Nigth Fae was a channel, and it ticked 7 times. This is a single cast that will do damage, and then you can move on with your life. So that's pretty good. Again, the duration, it doesn't make the overall damage, damage per second over time doesn't seem that great, but it's actually the highest bursting thing that you can do as an Ellie for your Covenant abilities, as you can see, and we'll do a comparison of the numbers again soon. If you're hitting 2 targets, 7.2k. If you're hitting 1 target, 1.3k. It's still pretty decent. We'll compare it again. This, if you're enhanced, there's no cast. It does a decent amount of healing in an AoE fashion to your buddies, and you saw it just like spread out all over the place. And the other good thing about it is if I do crit, it will reduce the cooldown. Now, how much? I didn't get any crits there. Actually, I did, but it only decreased the cooldown by 5 seconds. So it's like, okay, not that great, not that big of a deal. But the thing is, it syncs up with crit pretty nicely. And there is a conduit, which I already have equipped, which is the critical strike chance of chain harvest is increased by 10%. This goes up to about 30-40%. So this could be pretty good as you ramp that up. Now, and when it crits, it does some serious damage. 7.2k damage is pretty serious. So for this one in PvP, it's actually quite good because it is one cast. It is a different school. If you get kicked, you won't poop your pants. You'll be able to still play the game. And the other thing is it does damage in a burst fashion and cleaving. I was doing some 3v3 arenas on the beta, and this was some of my first or second ranked damage done. And it's pretty nice. You have to be careful that it will break AoE, but so will Nigth Fae and so will Vesper. So this one is actually bursting pretty hard, and I actually really like this for LE PvP. And it syncs with crit, which is also very good because Shaman might be going some more crit rating because of some other things that are coming up. Now, that's pretty good. This is pretty good damage. Now, Mythic Plus, again, it is also pretty good. It's one cast. You get it out of the way. You're casting other abilities as well as an LE, so it's actually not bad. And it's an enhanced Shaman. It's also very good because it's an instant cast with the Maelstrom weapon stacks. So this overall is actually a quite good all-around ability. Covenant. The only thing is the cooldown is not that low. 1.5 minutes is a little bit higher than, Vesper, and it's definitely higher than Necrolord. But to me, this one is an all-around pretty good. In PvP, strong damage. In single target, it's actually probably is the best, actually, because it does the damage in one global, and then you can move on. And then in Mythic Plus, I think it's very strong. So that's what I think about the Venthyr. So now what we'll do, guys, that's pretty much reviewing each of them individually. Now let's go ahead and let's look at my magic sheet here because I've compared them all next to each other. So now that we've done this, and we did this all on stream, so I want to thank you guys for all the questions that chat has given me. That's why I have all my notes here, and I'll share this, it's going to be in the description as a paste bin. I'll put it on the forums and stuff too. But if we look at it from this perspective, I think it makes it a little bit easier. Max targets. Venthyr does 18k damage in one global and a 1.5 second cooldown, and then does a 2.6k heal, pretty decent. Necrolord does about 11k damage with 6 globals and 45 seconds. That's a big AoE. You do get fulmination though. Kyrian, it does do 18k damage on a 1 minute cooldown, but it does take some globals to make that happen. It isn't just going to be damage and then moving on. So that is that's my only criticism of Kyrian. And then Fairy actually does a good amount of damage. It is on a 2 minute cooldown though. And for Ellie, I particularly think that it doesn't ramp off of our mastery quite like it does with Enhance, and we'll get to that later when I compare them all. Now, looking at 2 targets, which is, actually I'll go to 1 target. 1 target, Venthyr is doing 3.6k in 1 global. Necro's doing very low. Kyrian's doing pretty decent. It'll take more globals. And then Fairy is doing a pretty good amount, but it's, again, on a pretty long cooldown. So here's what we have to work with. And in my personal opinion, if I want to play PvP, I want to do PvE, PvP, raid, mythics, everything. In my opinion, I think the choice is this. I don't think Necrolord is going to be quite the play unless you're doing casual PvP, you're trying to AoE stuff down. And this is LE only. We'll talk about class-wide what I'm thinking, which might be different, which will be in a different video. And Enhance, I'm going to do a different one. And Rest, I'll do a different one. But if I had to pick, to me, it's really between Venthyr, Kyrian, it's really between Venthyr and Fairy to me. Kyrian, I want to say it is good for PvE, but it bothers me so much that secondary ability from Kyrian, the Swolkin, that potion is not usable in PvP. And in PvE, it seems so non-significant. It bothers me. I think that this damage is actually pretty good, but it's not a burst damage, which I want to see, and it's not the max AoE damage as well, which is really, it does more damage in the globals than Nigth Fae, but I really like the Soul Shape ability as well for mobility for both PvE and PvP, truthfully. So I gotta say, the Fairy is a 2 minute cooldown, but I do like it. But my number one, if I had to pick it right now for Ellie, would be Venthyr. And with a close up probably of Fairy and Kyrian. These would be, I'm a little bit torn here because I know Kyrian would be more damage, but to me, it's not viable in PvP because of that totem. It doesn't give you anything else from that Swolken. Fairy, at least you have some mobility, and then you also get this decent damaging ability if you know they don't have kicks, for example. But Venthyr, to me, because it's a different school, because it's an instant one cast and then you're done, it can't really get messed up unless you're kicked. You can't move away from it if you're positioning the mobs right. If you put down your totem, you're going to have to reposition it, which is off global, which is good. But yeah, and then Fairy, to be honest, they could run out of that, so it could be kind of rough, to, especially with a 2-minute cooldown and this damage. I think as Venthyr will have some mobility to get around, which will be kind of nice. Not as useful as Fairy, but still. And the other thing is this will be more important if we stack crit. So we'll have to see how the stat distribution works. But if we crit, and if this Covenant levels, this Conduit levels up quite a bit, because I actually think this is one of the most powerful potency conduits as a Venthyr. If this goes up to 30-40%, that will be very strong, because again, if we read it, it says for each target critically struck, which could be up to 5 targets critically struck, the cooldown is reduced by Soul Harvest is reduced by 5. So if 5 people are crit, it's going to reduce the cooldown by 25 seconds, which is going to make it equivalent to the Kyrian cooldown of that totem. So that's what I think, guys. I hope you like this video. I'm going to be doing another video on Enhance, another video on Resto. I know there hasn't been a ton of stuff on Resto. And then I'm going to do a video on what do I think about the whole class, because it is a little bit different than this video, because I want to compare damage and what I think about using things in different environments, because PvE and PvP is so tough, and we're going to have to be making those decisions on which lane you're going to pick for which Covenant, and I'll kind of try to make it so that if you're a PvE only, you'll kind of get my thoughts there, which I hope you did here. If you're trying to do everything like I do, I'm gonna tell you what I think there. So that's gonna be up to you guys, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down below in the comments what one you think you're gonna go, and if you think that maybe I should test things in a little bit different way, or you have some suggestions for me, would love to test. And I hope you guys come by the stream, twitch.tv/TiqqleThis, trying to get that partner before Shadowlands. Let's freaking get it. Thank you guys so much. Take care.